It's your body, my choice.
Your body, my choice. The female experience, or girlhood as we like to call it, has long been contradictory. As the story goes, God took Adam's rib, deemed imperfect, and molded it into a woman. Then, unscrewing her head, he filled it with glitter, adding in sugar, spice, and everything nice. The first woman, a perfect complement to mankind. But what of Lilith, the woman before her? She was a failed prototype, cast aside for refusing to submit to Adam. As for Eve and her descendants, new requirements were given. Commandment number 1, you're the devil's gateway, but expected to be the family's moral compass. Number 2, you're a sexual being, but expected to be pure and chaste. Number 3, you are unfit to lead, intellectually a child, yet tasked with leading and teaching children. Some might ask if she is still considered human given these restrictions. She has the anatomy of one, but is she granted the autonomy and identity humans ought to possess? To better understand what moral implications there are for the strained relationship between man and woman, we will be taking a look at it from the lens of both Kantian and utilitarian ethics. By applying these ethical theories to the issue at hand, we can make sense of the goals and effects of the radical feminist movement and determine whether it is the morally just answer to sexism within America. Because of this friction between societal constraints and female autonomy, feminist movements such as the 4B movement have emerged, especially in recent years. Although the movement was originated in South Korea, due to the recent election that resulted in Donald Trump winning his second term, American women have adopted the principles of 4B. No dating men, no marrying them, no childbearing with men, and celibacy. These are the 4Bs, stemming from the Korean word for no, which is B. With these principles, Korean women pushed as a revolt against the daily misogynistic worldviews they face. With Donald J. Trump winning the 2024 election, many American women feared for their bodily autonomy, given his Project 2025. A Twitter user by the name @MattWalsh writes, "Now that the election is over, I think we can finally say that yeah, actually Project 2025 is the agenda. Lol." This 920-page plan advocates for enforcing the Comstock Act to ban mailing abortion pills and suggests that the Department of Health should protect life immediately after conception. A recent study done by the Pew Research Center conducted July 5th through the 17th of 2022 concludes that roughly 63% of men under the age of 30 are single, compared to 36% of women. This rising male loneliness epidemic is not strictly optional either. An increase of influencers such as the infamous Andrew Tate has been linked to the revival of blatant sexism, perhaps as a way to cope. Involuntary celibates, or incels as we call them, consume content that capitalizes on their feelings of rejection by promoting toxic masculine ideals. Most of this type of content encourages men to blame women for their inability to find a partner. Daniel Cox, Survey Center on American Life, found that more young women are leaning left as young men are heading more right-wing. While the 4B movement can be seen as a counter-reaction to the rise of the aforementioned incel, women have been long exhausted by their role in society. From my perspective, systemic misogyny and more quiet forms of sexism have always existed throughout American history. The only difference is that due to the globalization of digital platforms, it's more evident. Under Acid Fairy's video explaining her recent date in which a man she went out with used dating coach tactics, yet made jokes about kidnapping her, TikTok user named @AubreyJeans commented, "Look at their desperation. Women are keeping score, and don't doubt it for a second. We're going to ask who you voted for." So, is the 4B movement a selfish overreaction, as some men claim, or a necessary step to finally gaining back what has been denied since the start of human civilization? When looking for a solution, the root of the problem lies in figuring out whether the action taken is morally correct. Utilitarianism, coined by John Stuart Mill, is a normative ethical theory that determines right from wrong by focusing on outcomes. Essentially, what Mill is saying is that for one to live life right, they must act according to what makes them truly happy and fulfilled. When a woman marries past what society considers her prime, she's considered a lonely spinster who must have a very unfortunate and depressing life. On the contrary, Paul Dolan, a professor of behavioral science at the London School of Economics, states that women who are single with no children are the happiest. He also says that while men derive benefits from marriage, the same cannot generally be said for women. Thus, according to Mill, it's irrational to be involved with men in the first place if possible. Now, you may be thinking, isn't this basically hedonism and a pretty selfish way to think? Nevertheless, Mill adds to this idea and answers the question from which we see the word utility come in. He states that there are two different kinds of pleasure, lower and higher pleasures. The distinction between the two is how fulfilling they are to the psyche, describing the ultimate end as an existence as free as possible from pain and as rich as possible in enjoyments. Women are also the initiators of 69% of divorces in America, according to a survey done by the American Survey Center. If it's ethical to pursue a life free from burden and indulge in higher pleasures, the rational response is to live life in accordance with the 4 no's. Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative is often mentioned as the opposing standpoint of Mill's utilitarianism. Unlike Mill, who said fulfillment of one's higher pleasures is a moral decision, Kant believed that fulfilling one's desires by acting on them are simply hypothetical imperatives, or rules to follow when you want to achieve something. Instead, his ethical approach contrived of categorical imperatives, unconditional commands that are applicable by universal law and cannot have exceptions due to them then being contradictory. Kant also concludes that a person is morally correct depending on the motivation of their actions and not on the goodness of the consequences of those actions. So, as long as you are not treating another person as a mere means to an end, and to have a goal you act on without violating universal moral laws, you are following Kantian deontology. These two rules align with the fundamentals of 4B, as the main reason the movement began in the first place was to fight for the respect of human autonomy. By not respecting the very thing that differentiates humans from other creatures, the ability to be rational and to make decisions for oneself, those in support of passing mandates such as Project 2025 are denying humanity is any different from other species. While these arguments are straightforward to vindicate, there are some critiques to be made on each of the statements. If John Stuart Mill states that to live life correctly you must look to decrease suffering, it can be argued that men are making the right decision to denounce radical feminism, especially when it's been proven that in a major survey, American adults found that married men are healthier than men who were never married. Since it brings them no personal gain, what reason do they have to make peace with a decision that will deny them the white picket fence future that they've always been promised? Mill also says that even though many do not want to admit it, one's happiness is a predominant consideration in many of the details of morals. The problem with this justification occurs when Mill discusses the calculation of what is considered a higher or lower good. Brain scans taken by Susan Fiske as an effort to research the effects pornography has on the male brain showed that more and more men are becoming hardwired to see women as objects. Therefore, the reasoning behind wanting a relationship is harbored in ill intentions, thus treating those women as a mere means to an end. The benefit these specific men would get from invalidating female reproductive rights be considered a momentary pleasure, which Mill consistently warns should not be prioritized over higher pleasures. So, we've come to the conclusion that the critiques can be explained regardless, but the true solution to this problem does not exist. Both utilitarianism and Kantian deontology have different interpretations. Still, given the ill intentions of misogynistic men, and placing the two forms of happiness brought by each argument onto a scale, it's clear that utilitarianists and followers of Kantian deontology would most likely find that practicing the 4Bs as a form of revolting against the patriarchy is a morally conscious decision.